Marty, you want to call the roll?
Committee Member Richard Black.
Here.
Committee Member Lori Lalonde.
Yes.
Committee Member Craig McVeigh.
Here.
Committee Member Joe Roth.
Here.
Committee Member Roger Young.
Here.
Vice Chair Susan Raffanello.
Yes.
And Chair Ty Harris.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Public comment. Open public comment. Dave, you want to go first?
Yes, I guess I haven't introduced myself the other times I've spoken. I'm David Hellwig. For those that don't know me, I've been hard to believe, but a resident of Islamorada for 19 years now. 9 of those years I've been on the board of directors of Habitat for Humanity of the Upper Keys, and I guess 6 of those years I've been president of the board. So I've had the opportunity to observe all your committee meetings, except the initial one, I believe. Having been asked and agreed to volunteer to facilitate if that was needed. And I would like to take the opportunity to share a couple of observations, if I may. First of all, I think the process has been excellent. It's been well managed. There's been lots of opportunity for diverse points of view to be expressed and discussed. Important benchmark information has been provided by your consultant, who I was unaware of before, that organization. I think they brought good information. The meetings have been efficient. I really like ending at 7 o'clock. That's pretty cool. And as a committee, you've managed to stay focused on a few major important topics, which I think has been key. I have quite a bit of experience with different boards of directors and commissions and committees and things like that over my career. And I do believe that the 3-year staggered term approach and 3-term limit is pretty consistent with what would be considered widespread best practice, not just for councils, municipal councils such as this, but boards of directors of all sorts, including our recent experience with Habitat International, which just reframed their policies in exactly that regard. Actually, the best practice recommendation there was 3-year terms with a 2-term limit, but Habitat didn't accept the experts' recommendation and went for 3, which is kind of where I think you've ended up. So that was spot on in my opinion. Practical solution, which is great. As the last meeting ended, we started to get into 2 new topics. One being councilperson compensation. I didn't get very far into that, and hopefully we're getting some benchmark information this evening on that. I've had the opportunity to research that myself. I love AI. You can ask it questions and it truncates the effort quite a bit. Having looked at that, you'll find there's published information for Southern Florida, particularly all the communities in Miami-Dade. And there's quite a range from 0 compensation to more than you'd want to propose paying. But there's a mid-ground, I believe, that's pretty much where we are. Now, as a practical matter, while we're considering this, I think there is a matter of social equity, I'll call it, to be considered. I don't follow all the details of the budget development here in the village. I just don't have the heart for that. But it's quite a challenge, as you all know. And it's my understanding that in that process, the staff has been told that there's no money for raises. So it would be kind of not socially very cool to be proposing a raise, if you will, for our commissioners, and at the same time, in the same year, when the staff, who really does all the work, doesn't have the opportunity even for a cost of living adjustment. So I think that needs to be kept in mind. The other observation that I really related to is in these sort of things, any reasonable amount of adjustment of compensation that you can make or even think of proposing isn't going to make any difference, in my experience, in who volunteers their time to be involved and put all the time and effort into it. It's done out of personal care and commitment to the community or the organization. It always is. Lastly, the one that was fascinating to me, I did not realize that it was unique in our charter to have the limit on the amount of that taxes could be raised. I believe the numbers were 5 mils, and it's currently like 1. That's an interesting point, that number one, that it was unique, but particularly this year, I think it's especially important, and if anything, probably ought to control it a little bit tighter. There is going to be something out of the state legislature dealing with property taxes this year, and it will be transformational, and everybody's going to struggle with it, and the last thing you want is the council just to say, well, look at all that money we just lost, we got to make it up by raising taxes, right? So I think having that in the charter is actually a good thing, and if anything, I would suggest tightening it rather than loosening it. Lastly, I think for practical purposes, it's really important that you stay focused on just those few really critical and high priority items that you have been discussing. To go beyond that, with a wholesale charter review and overhaul, number one, I don't think there's the community interest in doing that. And the key issue, dealing with the key issues, would kind of be lost. And quite frankly, to do so would take quite a bit more time and effort than this committee has been allotted, given your timeline. So thank you for the opportunity to observe, and I hope those are helpful comments.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else for public comment?
Okay, my name is John Fernandez. I'm a little bit disappointed that we have not started our meeting by a pledge of allegiance, and also that we have not recognized those brave individuals who gave their life for our country just a few days ago. So at this point, I would like for you to spend a couple of seconds just remembering these individuals who also happen to be Air Force members. Please. Thank you very much. Again, my name is John Fernandez, and I've been around the village for something over 20 years, and I've been very involved in the village. I was this LPA chair for 7 years. I also, this reason I'm having this right here is a plaque that I received from the village on 2006 for being a Charter Review Committee member. So I have been where you are. And after this one, there was another Charter Review Committee, and I was also serving in that. So what I'm saying is, I know where you are. And I give you a lot of credit because it takes time, effort to be where you are today. Okay, I still remember who the chair of that committee was, the first one, which, by the way, he's a very successful businessman here in the village still. The reason I'm here today is because we are doing the same thing that we did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there was a 4-year membership for being a council member. And what happened was 3 of those council members were called the Gang of 3. Those of you may remember that. Some of you probably were in high school when this came about. These 3 individuals control the village. They did whatever they wanted, and they didn't pay any attention to the people of the village, the citizens. So a Charter Review Committee was formed. I served in it. And we made a recommendation to let the council decide what they want to do in terms of term limits. The first time around, it was totally defeated by a big percentage. No, we want to keep only 2-year terms. A few years later, we did the same thing again, another charter review committee, and I served in that. And again, the recommendation was by the council, let's go to 4 years, to 4 years. And again, the citizens of the village said no. So this is the third time around. Now, this is a little quirk now, because instead of 4 years, we're going to 3 years. So those individuals that were pushing for 4 years back then, they're still around. And now they say, well, we put 3 years, maybe the people in the village will accept that. They're not going to accept it. Now, there's a number of issues why the village, the critics say, well, 4 years are not good. And I'm going to give you some of them. One particular individual, just in this newspaper that just came out a couple of days ago, says, well, we want to bring more professionalism to the council. Are you saying that these individuals who serve in the council were not professionals? Matter of fact, some of them are still serving. And they're serving back in 2 years. And they're serving now. So they're not professional. The other is, every 2 years, we don't have enough time to learn how to run the place. That's a fallacy. In the U.S. Council, Congress, 2 years, 400 and some individuals serve for 2 years. Somehow they're able to figure it out. Matter of fact, many of our council members, current council members, have served 2 years, and they get reelected. So that means that 4 years is not a sure thing that, hey, we're going to have continuity. Now, another issue that I've said here is, well, you know, what happens if everybody leaves at the same time? One individual was left, not too long ago. What happened? Nothing. The village continued to run, and we were able to accomplish what needed to be done. Now, it wasn't on purpose. 2 individuals didn't want to run back, didn't want to run again. Another person moved out of the way, and so on. But the fact is that having that idea that you need so much time to run the village is not accurate. It is not. Because the policy of the council is to provide policy, not run the day buildings or activities. Now, what are some of the things that these individuals for 2 years have accomplished since the 2 year was put in? Okay? Remember when they were trying to build a bridge across US 1 for traffic? It was a 2-year term council member who raised an issue, and it was brought forth, and after much discussion, it was decided it was not a good idea. Remember that? Those of you that were around? I know some of you are not looking at me, but you know that happened, right? The other thing that happened was this. Remember at one time, we wanted to have a sewer plant in every key? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And finally, one council member said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to try it and see if we can come up with a better solution. And that's what happened. We stopped the idea of having 4 different sewer plants and decided to go and work with Key Largo. And that's what happened. And it was the 2-year term person who did that. Okay, let me give you another example. Just recently, in the last couple of years, we have changed the village person or company that picks up our garbage. Remember that? We had a long-term big company that was collecting our garbage. The 2-year council members decided that was not good enough. So what they did, they made a change. And I'm telling you, I'm super satisfied with the council, with the present company that is doing the village, picking up the trash. The point I'm trying to make is this, folks. The people of the village, regardless of what anybody else does, we have functioned and worked well with 2-year terms. Going to 3 years is just a way of getting around getting 4 years. Okay? But that's not the answer. Leave it like it is. Now, I'm going to be upfront with you guys. I may be wrong, but I guarantee you, each one of the individuals who are appointing you to this one of the questions they may have asked you before they appointed you is, well, what do you think about the 4-year terms versus 2 years? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're wrong. Yeah, nobody asked you. Okay, I accept your word. But I can't imagine individuals all of a sudden have an interest in going to 3 years, especially when they've had 2 years, 2 elections already, where it was totally not accepted by the village. And you know what? It's not going to be accepted this time. Because people have memories, and they remember how it was. Okay? And they're not going to accept it. So you're going to go through the whole process, and you're going to find out that the members of the village, the citizens, are not going to accept a change in the 2-year term. Now, I know you guys got your work cut out for you. And you know what? I feel for you. Because, like I said, I've been there. I've been where you are. Twice. I've been where you are. And then the first time, I don't know why they did it, but they gave us a plaque for those of us that serve in that committee. And it says, appreciation to John Fernandez for your dedication and contribution in service as a member of the 2006 Charter Review Committee. Then we had another Charter Review Committee. For some reason, maybe the village was trying to save some money, so they didn't give us a badge, a plaque. Okay? So again, I'm speaking from experience, folks. I'm not standing up here just talking without knowing what I'm talking about. Okay? So, I ask you, look back and look at the history of the Charter Review Committees in the past and why they did what they did. And I appreciate you giving me the time to express my thoughts to you. Very infrequently do I come to the village council members or to any other meetings, because I'm a little bit of age. I'm getting to be like close to 87, and it's sort of hard sometimes to get somewhere. But, I just felt this was so important that I needed to come up here and make you guys aware of the history of the Charter Review system. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And good luck to you.
John, thank you so much for your comments, and also thank you for your service. Thank you. I know this isn't a council meeting because they don't respond to anything that comes from general public comment, but we're not the village council, and I think we can respond to some things. The 3-year term really, I thought, looking back at my notes, came from the feedback we got from the League of Cities as to what other cities are doing. And for me, what really swayed me that the 3-year was the correct way to go was the budget cycle. And also my experience having been on staff and knowing that the constant potential turnover of every 2 years, you're always getting new people, that it makes it harder to do. And it's, frankly, if you're looking at it from a manager's perspective, we seem to have gone through more managers on the 2-year cycle than we did when we were in the 4-year cycle. And as we heard from Dave Hellwig earlier, there are plenty of studies out there that say that 3 years staggered is best management practices for lots of organizations. So I do appreciate your comments. And I would not be surprised that that if 3 years actually goes to the voters with the staggered terms, that it may not pass. But we're up here to do our job. I also agree with both of your comments that the charter is in pretty good shape. This is the 3rd charter review. The charter is in pretty good shape. What's the first rule? Don't mess up something that's working, right? So I think this committee's done a really good job of using a light touch in areas where we think there may be some area for improvement. And that's why you should have a charter review at least every 10 years, because it does give you an opportunity to look back and see what's working and if there's a chance to make it better. And sometimes you don't make a change. Now, and the majority of this charter, I don't think the majority of us want to touch at all. That's just my opinion from listening to the comments in the last 3 meetings. So thank you for giving me a chance to say that as the chair of the committee. And with that, is there any more public comment? Larry?
Good evening, folks. Larry Dalton, Upper Metacom Bay. I want to thank you for your service to this committee. It's a lot of time and effort that you've put in, and the citizens really do appreciate it. In my career, I've had the opportunity to serve on numerous committees, be they charitable or semi-governmental or governmental. And the key in keeping the committee, for whatever purpose it is, going is having a staggered election cycle. Now, for that, I don't care if it's 2, 4, or whatever, but it's got to be staggered. We got to figure it out. We can't have an entire board of commissioners elected every 2 years. So even if 3 years doesn't get passed, we've got to do something to ensure there's a staggering somehow. And my personal opinion, being on the Budget Review Committee, it's if we have granted it would be every 6 years that it would come up, but we have to pay for a special election. And as we talk about, really looking at how much money is coming into the city versus how much we're spending, that's an extra expense. I don't know how much it is. I haven't looked into that. But it's something that we need to consider whether the taxpayers want to pay for a special election if we're going to an every 3-year type thing. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You're doing a great job, and it really is appreciated.
Thank you, Larry, for your comments. Marnie, we have anybody on Zoom?
We do not.
Thank you. So I'm going to do a better job tonight than I did last week in remembering where we were on the agenda. I believe that we left off with a little bit of a homework assignment for all of us to go back and look at and consider the information provided by League of Cities as to compensation for elected officials. Everybody agree that's where we left off, and that's where we're starting tonight. With that said, after looking at all that data, and I'm only starting this conversation off because I don't know that we have to spitball a bunch of numbers. I think we all recognize that none of this is going to be life-changing money. None of the sums that we're talking about are. I went and I looked at our closest neighboring city, which is Marathon, and I saw that depending on benefits, their compensation for their elected officials is $18,000 to $21,000. So I don't know if that's a place we want to start a conversation or not, but
What do you mean depending on benefits, just out of curiosity?
I don't know what it meant with depending on benefits.
Okay.
But it said depending on benefits in the in what I read. So without delving into that, I didn't know that there was much difference between 18 or 21. But I thought maybe we start that conversation with that number and then we go up or down. But at least it gives us a starting point based on a very similar city. Joe, I see that you're anxious to weigh in on this one.
We got to approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Stop where we are. Marnie, can we get a roll call vote and a motion on the minutes, please?
Motion to approve minutes from last meeting?
Second.
Okay, Committee Member Craig McFay,
Yes.
Committee Member Roger Young,
Yes.
Committee Member Richard Black,
Yes.
Committee Member Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
Committee Member Joe Roth,
Yes.
Vice Chair Susan Raffanello,
Yes.
and Chair Ty Harris.
Yes.
And motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe, for reminding me not to skip Roman numeral 3. So, as I was leaving off with that, the number from Marathon being somewhere between 18 and 21, I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say, whether that's something that we would recommend, we want to go up, go down. Anybody want to jump in? Craig?
Yeah, so I've been trying to give this a lot of thought. I know listening to different arguments about, it's not for the money, if you don't offer a lot, then it's, people trying to give their time. Other people say, well, it obviously takes a lot of time to do the job. So not that you're going to get necessarily a more professional person or something like that, but for somebody who's working and might have to give up time from work, having some compensation to make up for that. That's another way to look at it, So if somebody's like, well, you know what, say I'm a fisherman and now I got to cut out, X number of fishing trips, that might just help kind of fill the gap. So I think that's one way to look at it. Like right now at $1,000 a month, I know we've all heard different estimates as far as how much time it takes to do the job. I've heard anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week. And I'm sure that depends on time of year and the week and everything. Even at 20 hours a week, somebody, that's $12.50 an hour if you kind of put that into an hourly. So even if we double that to $2,000 a month, then you're making, then at 20 hours a week, it's $25 an hour. So, it's, again, I think at least if it was up to 2,000, which then would be 24,000 a year. It's a little bit more than Marathon. Looking at the spreadsheet, there's definitely a lot of places that are less than that. Like I saw one city was 1,800 a month, or was that a year? 1,800 a year there. So there's some pretty low numbers on there. But again, I don't think we also need to necessarily say, well, this is what everybody else is doing because we're our own community. And I think looking at our revenues are a lot higher than some of these other ones. So, I think we should try to bump it up. And obviously then it'll be up for the voters to decide. So I think anywhere between 15 and 2,000 a month would be my recommendation.
Roger?
Yeah, I'm still stuck like I was last week, around 2,000 a month. I do think we'll get possibly more people to come into the race, maybe younger people. Notwithstanding that we didn't get staff raises this year, but this isn't working with the staff raise thing. We're working on a charter. But I really think with the amount of time and former councilmen I talked to, it is an average of 30, 40 hours a week, sometimes many more. Now, granted, they signed on for it, but I think 2,000 is a decent number, and I think it would help. I think it's doable, so that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Richard?
I think 2,000 is a reasonable number. Another thought I had, just kind of throwing an idea out there, is what if we reduce the amount they get paid and give benefits? Just a thought.
Just a thought.
I don't know. Just throwing an idea out there. Well, it might. It will cost.
That's going to
more,
cost
for sure.
a lot more for benefits,
Look,
right? And then it's also, and quite
At
frankly,
least it's worth having it out there.
it's a nice idea, Richard. But additionally, that's also a teaser, right? If you're somebody and they're serving 2, maybe 3. I mean, currently 2, because that's what terms we have for 2 terms, and you've got insurance benefits when you previously didn't have insurance benefits because maybe you were self-employed or you're working for an employer who didn't offer benefits, and now you've got benefits for 2 years, and then you finish your term, you conclude your term, and now you don't have benefits.
It
right?
is. Most people
Right?
people
So-
would use it as a secondary, wouldn't use it as their primary because it wouldn't make sense.
There's a lot
to
of people in
reduce
this
it, but-
community who do not have health insurance. A lot.
No, I agree. Just an idea. I'm not.
Yeah, it's worth talking about, but it was a great idea, like sticking outside the box.
Joe?
Well, certainly I would advocate to be within our peer group, our like cities. And I think we're probably below where we need to be. As far as a set number, I would, when I first looked at the spreadsheet and started doing some research and looking at some things and trying to see how we pair up, it seemed to me that at a bare minimum we should be at $1,500 a month. I could certainly make an argument for more given where we're located, and given the cost of living that we experience down here across, when compared to other areas. But definitely I think there needs to be some sort of an increase.
Thank you. Lori?
Yeah, I feel there should be some sort of an increase as well. I'm with Joe. I think the bare minimum of an increase should be at $1,500 a month, and I think the max should probably be $2,000. Again, it's going to be a difficult sell to residents to vote for it, but I also think it should be tied to increases should be tied to a consumer index of some sort, right? Because then we're going to continually be able to have incremental increases versus long periods of time before there's an actual increase. Because right now the increase only takes place if it's part of the charter. So if we've only had, this is our third charter review,
Yeah.
there's a long time span between an increase in their pay.
Between December 31st, 1997, 2 charter reviews. Yeah, I mean, I'd like that idea if this group wants to go in the increased salary range. Susan?
I don't necessarily have an objection to some increase, because there hasn't been one for many years. I do like the way Richard is thinking. I will say, though, that if you say benefits in this town, it's a really hot trigger item right now, given some, what is perceived at least as maybe not exactly in the sunshine dealings, not that they needed to be with the village with prior management. So I think that if you say benefits right now, there's a backlash to it, and I think it would be cumbersome and hard to manage and hard to control, especially with the state of insurance right now. I have to look at it every year for our firm, and it's absolutely staggering. So it would definitely be a huge increase to the bottom line. I looked at what the League of Cities sent over for comparable cities. Again, I recognize where we are and that we're perhaps more expensive, but there was only a handful of the approximately 3 dozen that were double digits, and right now we're at 12. There was 6, 7 that were greater than 12. One was 30, a couple were 24. They were significant outliers. I think that the 18,000 is probably, even the 18,000 would be an outlier on this spreadsheet from what we are sent. So I don't think that the data out there of comparable cities supports it. I do, however, think that the cost of living in Monroe County may. And so I'd be open to that. I would be against 2,000. I'd be open to 1,500 with some sort of definitive adjustment to it.
So I really started thinking about this, and I thought Craig brought up a really good point. For somebody like Richard, a fisherman, that has to give up a charter, I mean, that's whatever that charter is going to cost in his pocket, $600 to $1,000. And we want to see more fishermen. We want to see more people that are younger that are in a business like that. I mean, I think there's something to be said for somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. I could live with $1,500 and a cost of living increase automatically, but I could also feel comfortable at $2,000. I don't think it's going to make a difference to the voters because I think they'll most likely shoot it down. But as Steve Friedman said at the last meeting, don't worry, do your recommendation on what you think is best for the village, not what you think is going to pass. And so I'd be comfortable at either number with a COLA, but that's me.
And I know we've been saying COLA, and I don't necessarily object to that for discussion purposes, but there's so many different cost of living indexes out there that I think a better tie, just for it to be cleaner in drafting and for calculation when it really comes down to it, would be whatever the increase the federal government gives the Social Security benefit individuals.
That's a good point. So I've heard a majority of people that seem to be comfortable somewhere between the $1,500 and $2,000, with a few at definitely comfortable at $2,000, and my vice chair being more comfortable in the $1,500.
Pushing to get to 1,500.
Pushing to get to $1,500.
Given the data.
With that said, and everybody's cards on the table on that, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'd make a motion for 1,500 with COLA.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we're going to stop. We're going to allow public comment before we vote on it, or we have more discussion. John, welcome to come up.
My name is John Fernandez, Alamorada. One of the other things that I've done in my life besides being in the Air Force for 20 years, I was also a human resources director for about 30 years. And I was the human resources director for the city of North Miami Beach. And this issue came up at the same time in the Charter Review Committee that I served back when. No changes were made. I suggest that you consider another thing. Nobody is going to run for $2,000 a month. No one is going to run unless it's $15,000 a month, because you got to put in too much time, too much away from your work, and so on. If you look around, most of the people around here are in business in some fashion. This is what I would suggest. Bring it down to $1,500, and then has a cost of living every year. 2%, 3%, whatever it is. Okay? And also, give a council member, after serving 2 terms, whatever those terms are, 3 or 2 years, a life insurance that they can carry on. Because, life insurance is very expensive nowadays. So if you provide that as a benefit, you have less cash up front, not $2,000, but maybe $1,500. Do a percentage of increase on an annual basis, whatever that may be. 2%, 3%, you guys decide. But then add a life insurance option so that individuals that serve in this capacity have something to take with them after they have served. Because right now, after you serve, you're over with. That's it. You got nothing else besides the salary you got while you were here. But I consider you open up this whole issue of compensation for council members to more than just money. Because life insurance is important for many individuals, especially as you get older. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Larry, you want to weigh in on this one? If we have anybody on the internet?
We do not.
Thank you. So we were back to committee discussion.
Lynn Tipton is on Zoom, though, if you wanted to speak with her.
Anybody want to hear from Lynn? Lynn?
Yes, sir.
You want to weigh in on this a little bit?
I wish we had the latest year's data, and I'm sorry we are always 1 year behind on the data collection for mayor and council salaries. And I've been listening to your conversation. I'm sorry I wasn't on right at 5:30. Be glad to answer any questions. And just know that all city charter review groups go through these same conversations, and that you're not alone. It's very hard to pick a number, both in your conversation about what you think might pass on the ballot and with what seems both responsible and reasonable. So I think you're doing great.
Thank you for your comments. All right, back to committee discussion.
Well, I would further point out that she just made a very interesting point and valid point that this is 2023 information. There is no 2026 information on here. There is no Key West information. There's no 2025 information on here. There's no Key West information on here. There's no City of Key Colony Beach information on here. Marathon's grayed out. So the only way to find that out is, as you did, the Google machine.
Yes.
So, I just think that it even makes a stronger point that we're even further behind when we're looking at these as peer groups using 2023 data.
Fair point all. Richard, do you have any additional comments on this?
No real additional comments. I think there needs to be a pay increase. That's why I think that it's a marginal increase, but having it at least offset cost of living as it goes on, I think that's that would kind of cover it for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I don't know how we would consider or factor in the suggestion from John about an ongoing life insurance policy. I don't even know what that would look like, what those
I
numbers.
mean, we have an insurance expert right here on the panel. We could ask him how that would play out.
Yeah, well, I was kind of setting that up. but-
It's after hours.
I think it would be cumbersome on a charter to include it for the voters.
So I'm not the expert in the field, I'm a P&C guy, but I will tell you that when you start talking about life insurance, you start talking about insurability, there's age issues, are they employees, are they not employees? I mean, how are you doing this? Are you doing this through the 550 cafeteria plan? What are you doing with this? How are you administering that? And what happens when they leave? Do they take over the premium payments, or are you paying them until they die? I mean, there's a lot of logistics behind it. I mean, I understand the concept and I understand the carrot aspect of it, but I just don't know if something like that is really doable without creating a lot of uncertainties and a lot of stuff going forward.
Thank you.
I mean, right, doesn't even in their current health comes into play too, right?
Insurability is a big thing. I mean, who knows? And one person could be obviously one premium, and another person could be a significantly higher premium because of insurability. So I don't know how you would equalize that. There'd be a lot to think about if you're going to do that.
Craig?
I think I'm for this. The cost of living, do we need to get specific on what that increase would be, or do we just need to kind of sort of keep it generic and let go to council as far as, you know what I mean? Not sure how.
Well, yeah, Susan made a good point that there are lots of different methodologies for calculating increases in cost of living.
Right, so I just Googled it up, and in this, to go along with what Susan had suggested for what the Social Security benefits increases, and it says the Social Security Administration uses the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. So it's the CPI-W to calculate annual cost of living adjustments, COLA. So, maybe that's one that we incorporate into our proposal.
Well, we come out a lot smarter right now.
Did it say what that last increase was? I'm just curious. I don't,
No, did not say what the last one was.
but it's usually 2% or something?
It's about a 2% target, yes.
Okay.
I mean, obviously it's going to be low. It's the federal government. I mean, come on. They don't really want to pay more in Social Security benefits than they have to. Okay, so we're looking for a motion?
Well, we had a motion on the table in a second.
What was the motion?
I was going to have Marty read it back.
$1,500 a month with a cost of living increase.
So we didn't specify the cost of living increase.
Right.
So I think we need to specify the cost of living,
Who-
an index.
The motion maker, can you amend your
Who-
motion to
Who made the motion?
be specific to the,
We can amend it to 1,500 COLA with using the,
Do you want me to say it right? The consumer,
somebody help me out here.
the consumer price index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, the CPI-W.
yeah, the CPI-W, how about that?
You're welcome, Richard.
Second.
thank you. We got a second?
Second.
All right. Marnie, can you call the roll?
Okay, Committee Member Richard Black.
Yes.
Committee Member Joe Roth.
Yes.
Committee Member Lori Lalonde.
Yes.
Committee Member Craig McVeigh.
Yes.
Committee Member Roger Young.
Yes.
Vice Chair Susan Raffanello.
Yes, with the caveat that I think that they use a number of different ones. So with the caveat that whomever brighter, better brains will come up with the appropriate tie-off, not that you weren't spot on, potentially. Yes.
And Chair Ty Harris.
Spoken like a true attorney. Yes for me as well.
Okay, motion
What,
passes
long?
7-0.
Okay. We've gotten through one that I felt was going to take a while, and I thought we we did that pretty well on time. Our next section, I believe, we either go back to, we were in 5, so we're still in the, are we in the millage or are we in the election? We were talking, we had 2 other issues that I'd written down. One was the discussion about the millage cap and whether we need to look at that. And the other one was the discussion that we had, if someone leaves office within the first 6 months, whether or not we should hold a special election, especially given that we're recommending 3-year staggered terms. Marnie, help me out. Which one was the next one?
Well, Jennifer actually had council meetings as the next item.
I think that was my thing. I just wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, so she had, she noted that special meetings may be held at the call of the mayor, in his or her absence at the call of the vice mayor. Special meetings may be called upon the request of a majority of council members unless of an emergency nature. Persons calling such a meeting shall not provide less than 72 hours prior notice of the meeting to the public. Item B is elected or re-elected council members shall be inducted into office at the first regularly scheduled meeting following certification of their election. And 3, majority of council shall constitute a quorum. No action of the council shall be valid unless adopted by an affirmative vote of the majority of council members in attendance, otherwise as provided by law. All actions in the village council shall be by ordinance, resolution, or motion.
So I really was trying to do was add one more letter to that, because it's something that happens and has happened a lot in village council meetings over the years. Is basically, I'll just describe what happens, is someone puts something on the agenda and everybody gets everything together, they go to that meeting and the council says, I decided to pull that from the agenda. And I looked under other municipalities, and a lot of them have this in there. And it's basically, I mean, it's no unreasonable postponement. So once it's on the formal agenda, it shall not be postponed for another day except for good cause and reasonable, good cause in the opinion of the council staff or employees. So that's what
I feel that one. I'm just going to share a brief story. As a young attorney, I had a plat approval, which is a ministerial function in front of Miami-Dade County. And there was a certain council commission member that had a beef with the developer. And so she would not show up when that item was called. She would walk off the dais. And Gwen Margolis was the chair of the Miami-Dade County Commission at the time, and so she would pull it from the agenda because the council person whose district the property was in was not in attendance. And we played this game over a series of months. So I agree that there should be some type of limit on being able to pull, and there should be some standard for pulling things off the agenda. And that just comes from my personal experience and suffering through that.
Yeah, I suffered through it as well, going through, stuff.
It would be passed.
Yeah, so I think it's important. It's on, like I said, and we can ask Lynn maybe, her opinion, but it is numerous ones I have looked at, it is in there. So just would love to see that added.
Well, it gives some certainty to the meeting. I mean, people show up and then there's some gamemanship and something's pulled and everybody goes home, and then it gets pulled again, and then fewer people show up, and then fewer people show up, and then fewer people show up. There's certainly something to be said about putting in some kind of standard. I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say about it.
Jeff, thoughts? I'll reserve mine.
Craig?
I don't have a lot of comment just because I don't have a lot of the background. I understand what you're saying. I would like to hear more about it, just so, and kind of the proposal again, just to make sure. But, I've been in the same sort of meetings where things get changed. I know sometimes they get pulled because there's so many people and they say, all right, we can need our own meeting for this, for some big topics. But yeah, I'm not opposed to doing something. I just would want a little more information, a little more background.
Roger?
Well, I've seen it happen more than once, and I get it. But I'd like to see what she has to say, what limits you could actually put on it or what somebody else is putting on it.
Laura, you were looking through your notes, so I passed over you.
Yeah, you passed over me because what happened is the pages weren't numbered on the charter, and I got flipping around and I was messing things around, so I had to put them back together. But I'm there now. So do you want to finish, Roger? I feel for you, and I feel for everybody who that happens to, where their item is supposed to be on the agenda, and then it gets pulled for one reason or another. I mean, how often do you actually feel that the reason that they were pulled was an invalid reason?
It happens a lot because of different personal opinions on topics that are up there and how close they are to it individually. And it does get pulled at times when, yes, it's a crowd of people, but sometimes it's just a sensitive subject or, I just...
So I guess
if it does get pulled, or it can get pulled with the way other municipalities have it in there, is that, if it's got a reason for it and, it can be pulled, but you can't just say, I don't want to talk about that tonight.
Yeah, but you're putting the person that's pulling the item on the spot to articulate a reason that for good cause shown, this item should be pulled. They don't get to just pull it and there's no discussion about it. That's how I see what Richard's trying to do.
Now, do they have to, the good cause have some sort of a benchmark, or they just have to articulate something?
Other ones don't label the benchmark. It just says for good cause,
So then that could be arbitrary, a good cause, right? How are you gonna facilitate a valid reason for whatever reason the council person has expressed as a reason for pulling the item?
I agree. Right?
So, I mean,
what I did
that's
was look
kind
at
of, it's a really...
other ones and copied what they had, so that's...
Well, items get pulled all the time because there's a defect in the notice, and that's a legal reason for those items. They have to be pulled. But there are other items that, at the discretion of the council, they can pull. I'd like to hear what my vice chair has to say about this.
Well, I've sat through, I think it was 3 or 4 meetings on some land use things where the applicant pulled it because he didn't like the crowd. That's been obvious. That's been some gamesmanship I haven't liked. I've listened to council meetings where what Richard has described has taken place. It seems like they just did not want that particular conversation. Maybe there was a different council member that might be out of town next time, although they are all very good about being present at meetings. I don't feel strongly on this particular issue because I think when somebody wants to articulate good cause, they're going to be able to articulate it if they do not want to have something heard. I would have a concern somewhat about giving staff the extra responsibility, and because it's a double-edged sword of having them determine whether good cause has been shown, because of, as I've said repeatedly in the past, human nature being human nature, they get to know the applicants, the staff do. They don't get to know the residents who show up at a meeting on 72 hours notice because they may oppose what the applicant's trying to do. They don't get that input from the residents until the meeting. And so, and if an applicant goes in and says, hey, I think we need to pull this for whatever reason, I wouldn't want to put it on the staff member to say, yeah, that's good. That's a good reason to pull it, or that's not a good reason to pull it, when, there hasn't been a mechanism to date for staff to hear from other community members either. So I think I like the idea about not allowing just willy-nilly things to be pulled. I've shown up on various occasions and they've been pulled. Not lately, but I have in the past when things were important to me. And it's frustrating because then you have to come back again and come back again. I think the Mercado property was 3 times. Yes, in some respects. So I like where you're going. I think the devil would be in the details. And that was a very circuitous, just extraneous kind of thought process.
So what I gather from that is the concept is good, but in execution, are you really going to be able to stop anybody that wants to pull something? But, you know, there is that old saying, give it the old college try, right? At least you're making somebody articulate a reason based on a standard. And that may be all we can do, but I think it's worth something, because everybody's time is valuable, and when things get pulled, when there's no obvious reason for them to be pulled, it frustrates everybody. And it also creates a level of distrust in the process when that happens. So I see lots of reasons to add that type of language in that Richard's suggesting.
One thought just from you saying that is you could just, I don't know if this would work or not, but allow, if it was going to be pulled, then the council would have to vote. It can't just be one person saying, I want to pull it. They all have to vote on it, whether it's pulled or not.
I mean, don't they already have to have a little agreement if someone pulled an item? Isn't that the way it works already? I mean, like when someone says, I want to pull this item, and then somebody else gets like, oh, okay.
I don't think.
I would
they
like,
have to.
So you're looking for a formal vote to agree to pull an item?
John, do we have you on?
Yeah, I had my hand raised for this, so, yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Yes, so the item would need to be, because once you have an approved agenda, your council's going to approve it, only the council can amend that agenda. So the council would need to take a formal vote on removing an item once it's on the agenda. So if somebody comes in and says, you know what, I'm not ready to vote on this because I was sick for the last week and this is an important decision and I just didn't have time to read up on it, whatever it is, the council would then need to vote, yes, we are going to defer till the next meeting upon a finding of good cause as articulated by Councilmember X.
So I have a question for you. For normal agenda items versus quasi-judicial items, is there a different standard?
Well, right now our quasi-judicial is governed by the Land Development Code. So there are limits on how long you could defer something. There are time frames as to when staff can pull it or when an applicant can pull it. I do think we would need to have a different standard for quasi-judicial, because if something happens with an applicant, say their attorney gets into a car accident on the way up and they are requesting a deferral, or their expert witness or whatnot is not available to testify for due process purposes, I would want to have a little bit different standard under quasi-judicial so that they have, they retain some rights in terms of a deferral. I mean, I think depending on the time frame, they'd still need to request it under the code. But if they were outside that time frame and they realized that they were not going to be able to present their case, they would still retain some rights, and it would avoid a challenge.
Yeah, we don't want to build in a procedural due process defect unintentionally.
Yeah, which we could work on. And then one of the points about why I do think I don't necessarily think it's imperative to have staff in there to be able to pull it, because I do see, Susan's point about sometimes the pulling influences. But if there's a legal defect in the notice or something like that, I would want to have staff be able to pull that, because if that's realized, a day or two before, we can have it pulled, as opposed to forcing everybody to come out. And then if people have attorneys, then they have to come out, because even if it's a notice, we can tell them all day long, hey, you cannot hear this, council, you need to defer this. If we're talking about the potential worst case scenarios, there is that potential worst case scenario that the council says, well, we think we're okay and we're going to move forward. So in those instances, I would definitely like to have staff be able to have the authority to pull that, because it is an absolutely legal reason that you cannot go forward. Not that you would prefer not to, or that there's some good cause reason not to. There is a legal impediment to going forward.
So do you think with the language that we're discussing right now, for good cause shown, do you think we cause unintentional harm to any other part of the land development code provisions for pulling items right now, or any other section of the code, or are we safe with that language?
My initial thought is we might want to exempt out the quasi judicial, or maybe build in that provision from the quasi judicial in, so that we have it a separate basis under. So those are treated differently. So you could build that into the code, or the charter, or you could just exempt it out, and then it's already built into the LDRs. And that would require a significant change to make if you wanted to do that.
Richard, you're just the rabble rouser tonight.
I just laid it out there. I mean, I would love to see something put in there, some provision of that.
I think what I heard from John was that we could put that in there, but we need to X out quasi-judicial, because that's already covered in the land development code.
It's well covered.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's
So
fine.
what does everybody feel about that? Anybody want to speak up?
I'd like to see what it looks like before I
Yeah.
make a determination. I mean, there's a lot of these things like term limits that you know what you're talking about. I do believe that the language of the particular section that is being proposed would be important to see.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that I can prepare something for the next meeting and circulate it in advance. What the language would look like, as I understand what you all are looking to accomplish.
We would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll table that one to the beginning of the next meeting.
Not pulling, tabling.
Tabling. I said tabling.
I know, I'm just teasing. Oh.
Look, it's been a long day. Hey, Marnie, what's next on our agenda? Because I'm going to stop trying to follow my own agenda.
Yeah, next up, we have elections, section 8.
Is this where we were discussing
Yeah, this is
special elections when someone bows out within 6
Right.
months? That's how I remember the conversation
filling
stopping.
vacancies in council.
Okay, let's hear what everybody has to say.
But just, Mr. Chair, just so the filling vacancies part is under subsection 7D. 8 is council meetings.
I thought this was the referendum part where we're talking about the millage rate. I thought that's what we were.
No, I know that we're going to talk about the millage rate. I had the two big things we wanted to talk about, other than what we've already discussed, were millage rate, but also on elections, dealing with people that may exit stage left in the first 6 months of their term.
And that's 7D.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 7 comes before 8. So I'd like to hear what everybody has to say about it.
I think 90 days is too long for a vacancy. I think that they should be forced to fill that vacancy within a maximum of 60 days.
I do not disagree. I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say about it.
Well, I don't think it should be. I think if somebody resigns
Within 6 months, that's what we were talking
Yeah,
about.
we were talking about within 6 months. Now with staggered terms, it's a little bit different. But I think if somebody resigns and there's more than half of their term of the 3 years remaining, it should go to a special election, which now that we have, if staggered terms take place, it cures the deficiency that already exists in our code of the next election is the only election. So by fallback, either way you read 7D2, it was going to be somebody appointed, no matter when they resigned, even though there is, obviously it was not supposed to be structured that way.
Right.
But I think that I don't think that the council should be filling a position other than potentially for an interim basis until the next scheduled election could be had if somebody has more than, if somebody resigns with more than half of their term remaining. If it was 2 years, I'd go 6 months, but with 3 years.
Right, but that's kind of the compromise, really. If we go 3 years, then we're kind of looking at some different timeframes.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, Susan. So what you're saying is that if someone resigns in less than a year and a half of their term, so if more than a year and a half of it, at that minimum a year and a half of their term is left remaining, then if they resign in January, then in November when elections come in, someone would be appointed in an interim basis to serve until an election in November could be had to elect someone to serve a year and a half of the remaining term. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would prefer, actually, that a special election be had and change the language of the charter. I'm just pointing out that if we switch to a 3-year term, the 7D2 language fixes itself. But I think if anybody resigns or has to leave office for whatever reason with more than half of the term remaining,
We should have an election.
you have an election.
Right.
And if there is a normally scheduled election within the next, and I don't know what the lead time leading up to an election needs to be, is it 6 months? If there's a normal election within the next 6 months, it'll be on the next normal ballot. And if there's not,
If there's a special election.
but there's only going to be 1 year there's not, so it won't be that big of a deal, or big of a stretch, hopefully, then there would be a special election if it was during an off year.
So, but again, we need to clarify that if the public approve a 3-year term, because a 2-year term, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and we can have alternatives. But yeah, I mean, no, I disagree with that, actually. The way I'm structuring it would make sense regardless of whether it's a 2-year term or a 3-year term. If somebody resigns with more than half of their term remaining, whether it's 2 or 3 years, there shall be an election within 6 months. If it's special election, it's a special election. If there happens to be a normal election coming up, it's a normal election. In a 3-year cycle, a normal election will be coming up more often than if a 2-year cycle, but a 2-year cycle still works. And I think for the extra cost of a special election, it is well worth it to ensure that we have people who are elected actually serving the role for the election for which they were elected.
Do we want to hear from the public at this point?
Just briefly about Larry Dalton, Upper Metacom Bay. Regarding this, and I think a special election is fine, but a regulatory body can't function with an even number of people. So if there's one gone, you're still going to need to appoint somebody, okay?
Correct.
Just make sure we're not going to wait 6 months to have a special election. You got to appoint somebody in the
No,
meantime.
yeah, the appointment would just be, I think Susan covered that. We would have an appointment, and then that appointment would only be temporary. Okay. All right. I think we're all on the same page with that.
I think we're on the same page with that, except for the example, if we had a 2-year term, if we continue with a 2-year term, and some of the situation we had now where somebody left, I'm not so sure we're going to receive volunteers to sit up and serve for 2 months, 3 months, and prior to.
Well, what you'll probably end up with is somebody that's already been on council that doesn't want to be on council, but is willing to serve for a short period of time. That's probably your pool of people you're pulling for if you're only looking for a few months.
Or somebody who's intending to run.
I'd prefer it
For
be
the
somebody
special
that's already
election.
been on that doesn't want to run because you're.
I mean, that's
I
not.
know. We can't control that.
That's crystal ball stuff. Hopefully, somebody would step up to the plate. But I don't think that it's not ideal, but you can function with 4. It certainly is not ideal, and we wouldn't want it to last that long, but it can be done, number one. Number two, if nobody wants to be appointed, I fall back to it can be done, and hopefully the election can be done in a lot faster than 6 months. I just don't think that it is all appropriate to have a situation which somebody resigns or has to leave office with the bulk of their term remaining, and the citizens don't get to choose who their successor is. I understand interim measure. I understand, if less than half the term is remaining, it's not really worth the cost and pulling out of the hair. But if your situation would be the same if somebody resigned 15 months in. Who's going to want to do it for 3 months? It's the same question, regardless. So might as well have the
John Quick has
electors.
his hands up. I'm sorry, Susan, I didn't mean to.
John?
I had a question for him.
John needs to just
Mine
learn to
was-
just interrupt.
So mine was just a question on the 6 months. If there's gonna be a motion made, I just wanted to get clarification. Is it gonna be 6 months, and then this is just for drafting purposes, 6 months from the date of the resignation, or 6 months from the first regular village council meeting after the resignation?
Well, I was picking 6 months out of the air as an example. How much lead time do you need for a special election to meet all the notice requirements, printing of ballots, coming up with that sort of thing?
I think it's a minimum of 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
usually the supervisor of election wants everything in by end of June, beginning of July for a November election. I think, Marnie, you could correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you deal with her too, but I feel like that's roughly the time frame.
Yeah, this year for any ballot initiatives or even candidates to be on the ballot for November, they need to be in by July 24th for the purpose of printing the ballots.
Basically a 4-month lead.
Yeah, probably minimum.
And just a reminder, any special election is subject to the approval of the supervisor of elections too.
That's also correct.
So, I would say no more than 6 months out, which gives some play of a couple of months for the supervisor of election and life.
Does everybody want to hear a motion for discussion purposes? Don't all speak at once.
I don't quite know how to word, I mean, what you're saying, I get what you're saying, but to word that for John to make sense of it,
Well,
just 6 months before.
No, I think it's, if any vacancy occurs in the office of any council member and the remainder of the unexpired term is greater than 50%, there shall be an election held for the filling of that vacancy within the next 6 months.
Okay.
If there is more than half the term remaining, the position can be filled with an appointment.
The only thing that
And there'll be an interim, or there's at least directive for an interim to be appointed in the more than 50% scenario?
Yes, in the
As
in
well.
the 6 month, or in the, lesser of 6 months, or when the election is held, there'd be the interim appointment that could be made by the council.
Well, for purposes of quasi-judicial, you want to have 5. That's just critical. Because as most of you know, a 2-2 vote is a no. So you want to always have an odd number. Whether that's 3 or 5, you still want an odd number.
As I said, it's ideally you have an odd number, but you can function with 4. It's not optimal.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned at the last meeting, in a quasi-judicial setting, if you're the applicant and you're counting an even number, you can actually ask as a right for a continuance of that item because you're entitled to an entire panel to hear your case. So that's why I think it's just important that we make sure that there's a process for appointing somebody in the interim until we get to the election.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
So if say the 3-year doesn't get approved like we want, and this one is. So then if this goes to a 2-year term, so if somebody's right before the end of the first year, they have to leave for whatever reason. An
We'd still-
election 6 months later, but then that's for 6-month term. You know, so I think that's the only drawback is that's a very short amount of time at that point.
there are
It makes a lot of sense with a 3-year.
No, I get it,
Yeah.
and there are drawbacks if the 3-year is not. I'm still an advocate of this if it's a 2-year term because, yeah, it's not as much time, but the few times, there haven't been all that many times in the history of the village where there has been a vacancy created because on council for any reason, right? But when it creates a big disruption is, lay the cards on the table when Buddy left the meeting after he got elected or thereabouts. That creates some real dissension within the community that doesn't have to exist if there was a procedure like this. I don't think that you're going to have anybody that's like, oh, I'm going to resign because if I don't resign now, they're going to appoint in 2 days. I have to leave before my half of my term is up. There's just not been that many resignations, I don't think, on village council.
No, you're correct. We've had one that had to resign that I remember before that, and then we had a death. So, I mean, I think we're doing the best we can to give the people a say in who's actually sitting up here. And that's the best we can do. It's not perfect, but it definitely works better in a 3-year term.
It does.
But it's
100%.
workable in a 2-year term as well.
Depending on the time that the person decides to leave office. If they left office, 10 months in, then we're in a pickle because there's not enough time for them to be on the ballot in November. And so then you got to wait. Either you got to fill an interim person fills that spot until the next election, and then it's a whole new election because his term's already concluded.
Couldn't we just word that basically saying that the council has the right to appoint an individual until the next available election?
That's what exists now, and on a 2-year term, that's the problem, this has to be fixed regardless. D2 needs to be fixed regardless of whether it's a 2 or a 3, because if you read D2, it says, if any vacancy occurs in the office of any council member and the remainder of the unexpired term is less than 50%, the remaining council members shall, within 30 days following the occurrence of such vacancy, by majority vote, appoint a person to fill the vacancy for the remainder of the unexpired term.
But wouldn't
Fine,
just
we're not changing that.
Wouldn't eliminating
But
the 50%?
it goes
just
on.
saying Next.
It goes on, though. If, however, the remainder of the unexpired term is equal to or exceeds 50%, the remaining council members shall, within 30 days following the occurrence of such vacancy, by majority vote, appoint a person to fill the vacancy until the next regularly scheduled village election. So they're doing it.
But wouldn't just eliminating that 50% clear it all up?
It would clear it up, but then you're going to have an appointment. And that's what I'm saying. This should be changed. And the discussion is, do we want the village council to appoint somebody irrespective of when that council member leaves? Or do we want it always to go to the voters other than the interim startup period? Or is there something in between, which is where I'm suggesting the 50% rule, because that's relatively common in charters, that is the trigger. I acknowledge it makes more sense if there's a 3-year term. I think it still makes sense if there's a 2-year term, because either way, this whole thing reads like there should be a switch. And the problem is, even in the next regularly scheduled election, if you're on a 2-year term, it's always then the next election they were going to be expired and coming up for re-election anyway. So it's always going to be an appointment on a 2-year term the way we currently have it phrased. That's why I think, if that's the decision, we can just clarify it, and that's the decision of the council. But I think 7D2 is, needs clarification.
I don't think there's any debate that it's clunky in a 2-year cycle, and it works better in a 3. But if if it restores for part of our community some modicum of trust and faith that they're not getting gamed at the election booth, then I think it's worth doing. Even if we end up with the 2-year terms, I fall on the side of having the people get an opportunity to vote. I mean, they should be voting for who sits up here. So that's just my prerogative. So this is going to be the last item we're taking up for the day. We're getting close to our 7 o'clock witching hour, or Ty's late dinner, whichever one you want to call
So,
it.
Susan, I understand what you're saying. And I see it working with the 3-year term, but I don't really see it working with a 2-year term. Having said that, we have not had a lot of vacancies. We haven't had a lot of vacancies. Do I think this is kind of what's written is effective? No, it's basically saying no matter what happens, whether you have less than 50% of your term remaining or more than 50% of your term remaining, the council is going to appoint somebody. So we got way too many words to just simply say that. I agree with you there. And I do think that the citizens would like to have a say in somebody who's fulfilling a seat that's been vacated. Like I said, I think a 2-year term, it is clunky. It just doesn't work as effectively as we would like it to. More so on a 3-year term.
Clunky is a term of art.
Yeah.
Wait for.
All right, should I try to make the motion?
Yeah, can we wait for Craig to get back?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he's like a ninja.
Okay, that was very, very ninja-like.
While we have a minute, Marnie, can we figure out if we finish this item, where we pick up at the next meeting? Would we start with the millage rate, or are we going to go back to the other tabled item, which was the discussion of how do we keep quasi unaffected by?
Well, that I think we're waiting for John to.
Yeah. Craig, we were waiting on you because Susan's going to craft a motion for us, and I wanted you to be here to hear it.
Okay, so here goes. If a vacancy occurs in the office of any council member and the remainder of the unexpired term is less than 50%, there shall be an election within 6 months to fill the seat. In the interim and prior to such election being held, the council would be able to fill the seat with a majority vote of the remaining council people. If any vacancy occurs after 50%, the council shall appoint.
Do I have a second? Well, I was gonna get a second and then pass it on to John.
Unless I need to fix my motion, which.
Well, you've already said it, so I want to get a second on the.
I like the 3 years. The 2 year just kind of is.
Well, before we, let's get a second on. We need to get a second on the motion so we can discuss the motion. I just need a second for discussion.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, you're back on.
No, I'm sorry. The 3 year makes a lot of sense to me. The 2 year not as much because it was a rarity. But I don't know, John's got a good persuasive argument on it.
I agree with everything that you said, except the fact of just having 4 run it for that interim. I know, again, it goes back to having something on the agenda, like you've been waiting all this time and all of a sudden yours comes up, one person leaves and you have a 4-person forum to vote on it.
Yeah, that's why the council would appoint somebody in
So-
the interim until the
So
election.
I missed that part.
Yes,
So it
that's in
is-
the motion. That is in the
Yeah,
motion.
they're gonna point, and that's what the conversation we were
Okay,
having about.
then-
Gee, who wants to be appointed for stale bread for three months? And that's what we were talking about. Well, it'll probably be a former council member or somebody that may want to run in the
Okay, I
next cycle.
understand. I missed that part.
John, do you want to weigh in on what we're doing here?
Yeah, I just wanted to, as I was listening, so if, I thought, Susan, I thought I heard you say if it was less than 50% remaining, you would call the special election. I thought it was, did you mean to say more than 50%?
More than 50% is what I meant to say.
Okay.
That's my error, I apologize.
That was the only thing I was chiming in on. I wanted to make sure I got that, so I drafted, but I understand what you guys are looking to get to, yeah. Assuming it passes.
Joe?
No, I was going to say if you could amend it to that, or if it's less than.
I would definitely amend it to that. If it's less than 50%, council appoints. If it's more, election.
I would concur.
Larry?
No, oh, good, makes sense.
Marnie, you got anybody out there?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Let's get a show of hands, or we'll actually take a voice vote on this one. It's late.
Okay, Vice Chair Susan Raffanello,
Yes?
Committee Member Craig McVeigh,
I'd like to see a little more, like to think on this one a little bit more. Is that, I'm gonna vote no just because I want to think about it until next meeting. That's all.
Committee Member Richard Black,
Yes.
Committee Member Lori Lalonde,
No.
Committee Member Joe Roth,
Yes.
Committee Member Roger Young,
Yes.
and Chair Ty Harris.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 5-2.
See, democracy does work. We don't always agree on everything.
I didn't say I didn't agree.
Well, so
I'm the same way. I just don't see it working with a 2-year term. And without clarifying that it's only going to come into play if we have a 3-year term, then I would have said yes. So that's my problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of hitching too much to the 3-year term. So,
Yeah, and I was just trying to think in my head if there's another way some other verbiage that could allow it to work better for both.
So
that's all.
Craig, then you want to vote yes, because if we're following Robert's rules, you could raise it as somebody on the prevailing side at the next meeting to perhaps craft a better motion. But I thought the motion was pretty good for, this time of night. It was the most complicated thing that we actually discussed, and we waited till the end, which is not always the best way to do it.
So then let's come back the next meeting, which we still need to clarify what that next date is, right? Can we not? Because next week is,
The 23rd.
Spring break, next week
it's
is
the
spring
23rd.
break.
So the next time we're meeting is on the 23rd.
yeah, there's no meeting.
No, there's no meeting on the 9th.
Right.
Spring break.
Could I suggest that we pick up either next week or the week after that, but we have done several votes on up to date. Can we see the verbiage? Would that give it, because we have a long stretch between now and the 23rd,
Third, yeah.
where if that would give enough time to John or whomever is actually crafting the verbiage to pull some things together, it might help frame our thoughts on what we have accomplished and what tweaks may need to be done, and not all wait till the end of April and try to rush
No,
them
that's
through.
a great point. If we can try to accomplish that from staff level, from attorney level, that would cut it down in half.
It doesn't
what we
even
gotta
have to
deal
be,
with at the
it
end.
doesn't have to be perfect verbiage,
Nope,
just
nope.
frameworks.
I can get you all the, kind of the underline and strike through of the items that have passed so far, so you can take a look at it. I did want to let you guys know, I'm actually out of town on the 23rd, but I'll get you guys everything in advance, and I mean, one of my colleagues will be here in my stead, because I'll be out of the country that day. But I'll get you guys everything well in advance so that you can review it, and then you all can get a hold of me in advance too before I leave, with any questions or discussion items.
Thanks, John. All right, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Thanks, guys, you all doing a great job.